So I love the through line of media is if you're gonna commit a massacre, you gotta get it on art.
Welcome to My Brother, My Brother's Friend, and Me, a podcast where two real siblings and an additional third non-sibling watch Christian media and either glorify or damn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
I'm Michael.
And this week we watched the 1998 DreamWorks classic Prince of Egypt. Let's frame this conversation. It's probably not going to be the same as the God's Not Dead ones because this is a classic story. I mean, it's literally a story thousands of years old. I don't know who the kind of people who haven't read the Bible and are listening to this podcast are. I'm very proud of you if you are that kind of person, but I think it would be very interesting to me if somebody who did not know the story of the Exodus from Egypt was listening. But so we're not probably going to recap it beat by beat, but I did just have some conversation points I wanted to talk about, and of course, I'm sure you guys have stuff that you want to talk about. But I think the first one that is all on our minds is man, it is so nice to watch a movie that's not dog shit. I forgot what films were like.
It's so nice.
I was able to actually do stuff as well as have this movie on. In the past, I would start watching the movie and try to maybe get some homework done or maybe take some notes of what the movie is, and my jaw would just be on the floor with the pure stupidity. And it was so good to just enjoy a movie.
Yeah, it's such a good actual real film. It's got characters, it's got plot. And it is a gorgeously drawn movie. The art is incredible.
Oh my God, yeah.
Watching this film made me almost sad for how far DreamWorks has fallen. I think Prince of Egypt was one of the first animated hand-drawn animated movies that DreamWorks ever did, and then that, and then they did the directed VHS prequel, which is Joseph King of Dreams. But then they went straight into Ants, which was actually their theatrical release, their first theatrical release, and that was all CG. And I wish we were doing more cartoons like this, because I don't know, CG has always kind of been hit or miss for me. And once they did Shrek, and Shrek was a huge success, I feel like Shrek is the death knell of the modern culture in many ways. Shrek was a phenomenal movie, but its success overshadowed DreamWorks in such a way that they never made that good of a movie again until I guess How to Train Your Dragon. I've heard that's very good, but for so long
I'm so torn.
Uh-oh.
Because the Gen Z in me wants to scream at you for hating on the best film that's ever been created, Shrek.
Listen, I love Shrek. Shrek is a great film, except that it was too good. It was an Icarus. It flew too close to the sun, and then DreamWorks was you know what? If we just made a 5 or 6 more feather and wax suits, we could get that fucking sun. And then they did, and then there's 100 Shrek movies, and they all suck except for the first one. And it's
the second one kind of slaps.
Okay, you're right. The second one's very good. I forgot about the fairy godmother singing sequence. That I'm completely wrong.
That is the best scene in that film.
Yeah.
It's the best scene in any film. But I do agree with you, Aaron, that there is something that this movie has that, not to sound super old, but it just doesn't exist a lot of times, where I will just completely lose myself from the plot and just think man, that dude's beard looks amazing. And we don't, I think the only other movie that has done that to me recently was when I watched Brave, and I would just get lost in staring at her flock of hair. It's just such a gorgeous movie.
I was so stricken, it's so obvious that this film was from a bunch of Disney people. It just is so expertly done and exacting in its detail that I'm so with you. The animation is beautiful. Now, I do have to say, this movie does use CG, and it flexes when it uses CG. The nose falling off the pharaoh, the desert storm, those are all CG flexes.
Yeah. I was gonna add to that. Like, yeah, I believe DreamWorks was like originally started like as a separate spin-off studio to like spite Disney, and I mean they knocked it out of the park. Like they did such a good job. Like you can see how clearly influenced by like those '90s like cartoon Disney movies this film is. But like you said, Michael, the way that they implement CG as well as like hand drawn stuff, it's revolutionary. Like it is it's just such a cool looking movie. Like I was like watching this film last night, and I remembered like there's the part where they're going through the Red Sea and the Pharaoh's chariots are chasing after them, and the pillar of fire that comes down. I was like, I've seen that in my dreams, and like I haven't been able to place it for like 2 decades. And I was like, oh, that's what this is from, this recurring dream that I have, like of a big like pillar falling out of the sky. Like that's from this film. Like it left such a mark on me, this movie. And in so many ways more than visually. Like I was, when I was very young, I would engage in a lot of biblical play. Like I would make my parents like pretend to crucify me sometimes. Because like
No. You don't get to say that and then move on.
No.
So which parent was Pontius Pilate?
We all switched. We all got to be Jesus. We all got to be Pontius. We all got to be the Roman centurion. But like I would have
Was someone Judas?
No, Judas was not involved. But like it would be like, oh man, I bet we still have the VHS somewhere. But like it was this like cartoon story of like the Christians under the persecution of Nero. I wish I could remember the actual name, but like they were recalling the story of Jesus, and like I got super into that, and I would watch that 100 times, and then I like would force my parents to like crucify me with my plastic like building nails. I was like, this is when I still, because I was born in Indiana, I didn't grow up here, but like I remember being in my house in Indiana, so I wasn't more than 3 years old. Like it's wild, the impression, and we can get into the impressions that Christianity has made in our young lives, but like this like that movie and this movie, and then Joseph, the prequel Prince of Dreams, we had all of those on VHS, and like I would watch them. But like it was just so nice to revisit this after like 20 years and be like, oh man, this movie absolutely holds up. Holy shit.
Yes.
Can you guys like talk about when you guys first saw this film, and like what your initial interactions and feelings are about it were?
I'm a bit younger than Michael, so I don't remember a time in which this movie wasn't in my life. Like, this movie came out before I did, so like I always remember watching it. I remember watching it at our grandparents' house, I think the most, which is weird because they're not religious. But it's just like a really good story, and I know I've gone on and on and on about like the animation and like, but I think the story is something that I didn't quite realize how captivating it was growing up. Because I was just like, oh, cool visuals and songs, and I'm 8, but like this actually really hammers down on like the sibling fracture that happens between Ramses and Moses, which is a very interesting story that I was losing my mind because I was thinking of like 3 or 4 other like media that have like this trope comes from. And I'm not saying Prince of Egypt invented the trope. Maybe the Bible did. I don't know. It's just they nail it.
So I was all of 3 years old when this film came out. So I too feel like this was a part of my. I kind of feel that I might have seen this film as my introduction to the story of Moses, which actually is not that bad, like, to be honest. It's interesting because like our church growing up, I have a shorthand for all of the works of like Christian media that they kind of treat as the Apocrypha. So I just call it the Apocrypha. And this is part of that. And I don't know, like I loved all the songs. I have lots of opinions about the songs. It has some of my favorite actors as an adult, but like as a kid, I remember loving the setting, loving the visuals. And I remember, because I've always been a bit precocious, I
surprising no one.
I know, big plot twist there. I remember asking, I think it was my grandparents, it might have been my parents, why Prince of Egypt was the only film where the Egyptians had darker skin.
I remember this.
I couldn't have been more than like 5 or 6, maybe. But I love to ask questions like that. And the truth is, this film was just so careful in how it depicted different people that, of course, I would ask that question.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, Michael, because that is like literally one of my first notes. I was like, "Oh, they're brown people." Like, and I was just so like genuinely like pleased. For listeners, I'm a half Indian, half white person. So like I don't actually get a lot of representation in media. Not that this is representation of Indian people, but it is representation of brown people. And I, as anybody who has seen Christian art before knows, you will have a hard time convincing a lot of folks that Jesus was not like a brown skinned dude. And it is, I mean, you can definitely have an argument for like that the Egyptians did come from like a weird like Greco like a more fair-skinned lineage. I mean, I don't actually know a lot of historicity of that, but you can have a conversation about that. Josh, if you want to jump in, but like I just wanted to say like yes, it was so nice to see like in Christian media that seeing brown like Hebrews, it was really cool.
For all of the listeners out there, I made a bit of a weird hand gesture of excitement when Aaron brought up history. So what you're referencing is after Alexander the Great had conquered most of Persia, and that had launched the Ptolemaic.
The Ptolemaic dynasty.
Yeah. I can never remember if it's the P or the T that
those P's will get you.
Yeah. But at this point, Egypt was actually ruled, I believe, because this is one of the earlier kingdoms. Egypt was invaded by a group from the south that had much darker skin and what we would kind of generally put towards like African features. I'm putting a lot of quotation marks around that. I thought it did a really good job of representing that, especially in a movie where it's not going for historical accuracy, it's going for emotional accuracy. And I'm not a big stickler for historical accuracy in movies as long as they do it for a reason. Like, I hate the 300 movies because they do it for absolutely no reason other than, like...
Hey, let's have big fucking monsters for no reason.
No.
Are we going to talk about why they're there?
No.
But, like, if you want to take some, like, if you want to play around with the Surrey history just to get your point across, that's fine to me. And I thought they did a perfect job of this here. I also love a through line of how the Sphinx lost its nose throughout media.
Yes! Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Because there are about 1 billion myths of how the Sphinx lost its nose. From, like, Napoleon shooting it off during target practice to now Moses and his brother just goofing.
I mean, that's my headcanon.
Yeah, like, I have not... Yeah. I mean, there's, like, not a cartoon in the 90s that didn't have, like, one sequence where, like, they went on, like, a field trip or some shit and they ended up breaking the Sphinx, like, every single cartoon. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
It's my favorite scene, and it's so early in the movie.
It's so good. I mean, seeing the way that Moses and Ramses interact in the first half of the movie just sets up the way that they have their character arcs throughout the rest of it. As real life brothers, you guys might be able to have a little bit more insight into that sibling relationship. But I just loved the way that they positioned each other, Moses and Ramses, as foils. Like Ramses as the one who has all of the responsibility and burden of his father's expectations and responsibility to the empire on his shoulders, and Moses sort of like the laid back, like fun-loving guy who's always there for his brother. And then just the way that they twist that into like this heart-wrenching ordeal for Moses, where he has to like go up against his brother, like the way so in the film, like they set up like how Seti, I don't know if that's the actual ruler at the time, but like this is Ramesses and Moses' dad, who was the pharaoh. They talk about he sent all the Hebrew children to their deaths with this weird purge that he did to keep their population down, which they did commemorate with a hieroglyphic mural, which I thought was very funny.
throwing babies into a pool of alligators. Let's.
Did it remind you guys of the scene from Thor Ragnarok? Where, like, underneath the ceiling, there's the apocalypse scene. So, I love the through line of media is if you're gonna
do a
commit
genocide,
a massacre, you gotta get it on art.
gotta commemorate it.
Yeah, man. It's important. You don't want to forget.
Oh gosh, no we don't. But the thing is that, like, it's setting up, like, Seti to be this big bad pharaoh dude. And then so when Moses goes into Midian and he, like, settles down with the shepherds, and when he finally goes to the burning bush and talks to God, God is like, okay, you have to go talk to the pharaoh and, you know, demand that you let my people go. And Moses is like, okay, sure, hell yeah. And when he goes there, it's not Seti, it's Ramses, and that, like, it just adds such another dimension. It's like, oh no, this isn't what I wanted. Like, I'm fine fighting the guy who ordered all my like fellow Hebrews to be killed, but against my own brother, that's a completely different dimension. I loved the way. I mean, this is a 92-minute film before credits, like, and they packed so much characterization and, like, good writing shit into it. Like, it's just astonishing.
Well, even the motif of the older sibling being, like, weighed down by responsibility, and then the younger sibling just skating on by because nobody's paying attention, I think is something that most sibling dynamics can relate to. I might be putting a little bit too on this, Michael. But it does seem like that's something that, like, most people can relate to. At least with, like, well, you're the first kid, well, you have all of these, like, you need to go to college, you need to be successful, and then the second kid's just kind of the backup.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way with my sister, but out of the two of you, who would you say is the Ramses and who would you say is the Moses?
I reject the premise. I'm the Miriam.
Oh, hell yeah. There we go. Your question's invalid.
I think I definitely vibe like Aaron, who did nothing in this movie.
I love Aaron in this movie. He's just, like, kind of a shitty dude. Like, to prepare for this, I was, like, rereading the story of Exodus, and, like, in actual Exodus, Aaron's, like, it does get to do, like, a plague at one point. He gets to do the River of Blood, and, like, he's, like, Moses' mouthpiece. In this one, he's just like, Moses, you fucking, I can't believe you came back,
Imagine hiring Jeff Goldblum and saying, you know what, you're just gonna be set dressing.
I can't, I lost my mind. I was like, I recognize this voice, and when I went to Wikipedia, I was like, that's Jeff Goldblum.
What I love about it is, like, not... They do it, I think, that way to play up the Ramses-Moses dynamic, so that way it's not Aaron working through him, but at the same time, they still keep, like, a diplomatic flair about him, if you guys kind of, like, see throughout the movie. Like when their sister gets in trouble, he's like, oh no, let me, like, use my words and talk good. And I'm like, well, they even took the amount of time to say, if we're going to change his role, we'll try to keep at least the minute amount of characterization that exists in the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, they actually, they put so much care and, like, detail into this. It's just unbelievable. So I just, like, there's one part in the movie where, so, like, when Moses is talking to Seti about how he's too hard on Ramses, there's this shot of Moses, like, looking at him from the left side or the right side of the screen, and Ramses is looking back at him, and there's the Sphinx in the background, and it's like this big fucking huge imposing, like, face of Seti looking down on Moses. And then, like, I was like, oh man, that's such a cool shot. And then they come back, like, an hour later, and they have the same shot, except it's Moses again on the right side, and then Ramses, and then his father in the background, and then another bigger Sphinx with Ramses' face. It's so cool, and it's so imposing, and it just, it hit me. There's so many of these, like, little beautiful stills. I'm just, like, getting weepy thinking about how good this fucking film was. I'm so happy.
They thread an important needle where they are not light-handed with any of their imagery, right? Like, no one is showing restraint. However, it's done so beautifully that I let them get away with it.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing.
There isn't a point where you're right. Subtlety is not what this movie is going for. If you're gonna hit me over the head, at least do it with style. That's what God's Not Dead was missing. Style.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, one, ostensibly these are children's movies, so, like, you can get away with being heavy-handed, but, like, in comparison to the awful trilogy of God's Not Dead, like, yeah, it's always just like staring straight at the camera and saying, hey, this is the thesis of our film. Whereas like in Prince of Egypt, like they do it in like such a way that it is not just like constantly smacking you in the face. It's sort of like, hey, here it is. We're not trying to hide it, but this is what the film is about, like the conflict between brothers and like a weird new faith and like trying to sort out your identity and all these things. And like they don't have to have Moses like look at the camera and say, I am well, I mean, they do have a whole song about how it was his brother and he's conflicted. Yeah. So maybe it's not that subtle, but
they show not tell.
Yes.
Right? Like, even in song, it is a performance to, like, explain a narrative. It's not Moses deadpanning at the camera saying, Ramses is my brother. And that's it. Because that's what, if God's Not Dead directors were directing this, Moses would just look directly in the camera and go, God is to fight the people as my family, including my brother, Ramses, the Pharaoh. And it would be that, like, bullet point.
Michael, you've just called upon the darkest timeline.
Yeah, oh my god, don't even make us imagine.
God's Not Dead make the Prince of Egypt. It's 3 hours long. The Newsboys do all of the music.
And voice some of them.
Oh,
but
man.
There is a new character, Pastor Dave.
But there's like an entire montage of like the frogs attacking Pastor Dave and like because he's still
the plagues always target Pastor Dave first.
Like he's about to like wash his clothes in the river and then it's blood and he's like, oh shucks.
And like he goes out and there's just like gnats all over him and they're like, hey, no, we're still on livestock. What's going with you? You're like a couple plagues ahead, my man. He's like, I don't know. It's just God.
It's a living.
So we were talking about the songs. Can you guys talk to me about what your favorite songs were and you know, just like how you felt about them?
So, unpopular opinion. I hate musicals for the most part.
Boo.
So I know. I just like most of the time for musicals, they'll be like, "Here's our plot, and now we're gonna sing it," and I'm like, that does nothing for me. But this movie, it earned every single song that like was gonna bash you over the head, like we were discussing. Like the whole brother song was towards the end of that arc. Like it wasn't at the very beginning setting up what they would be. I think the most the song that gets stuck in my head the most is the one that they sing. It's Moses' father-in-law sings.
Okay,
about like the mountain and the rocks and the thread and the needles.
I mean, that's kind of a jam.
Yeah. That one gets stuck in my head the most. Now that I've shared my terrible opinions on media, I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, so I think mine, unfortunately, is the most popular opinion, but Deliver Us slaps. That song is 7 fucking minutes long and not a dull moment. Not to mention, it was recorded by someone who has been, her name is Ofra Haza. She is known as the Israeli Madonna. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. She 18 languages.
Oh my god.
Minutes long. 18 languages. I just think they perfectly like have the imagery matching with the song, but then if you just listen to the song, it's powerful. Like it is such a strong opening that had the film messed up with any of the animation, any of the following scenes, that opening song would be all we talk about.
This movie could have been Cats with this being its memories.
Yeah.
Where everyone forgets, but thankfully it stuck the landing around the movie.
In the vein of pretending to be crucified, I do have a distinct memory of me like running around my parents' Kokomo house, just like yelling, "You're playing with the big boys now," like over and over again. That is not. I mean, that's not a good song. Like, the people who play the two priests, which are Martin Short and Steve Martin,
yeah.
they can't sing for shit,
Nope.
but I thought that song was so cool because of I mean listen, anything with snake imagery is very cool in the Bible, and like that whole passage. When I was 12, I went and through and reread the whole Bible, but like that passage where like the Egyptian priests are able to create snakes, their own snakes to staffs with black magic, did make me believe in like black magic for like a couple years. I was like, oh well, I mean it's in the Bible, so I mean God can do magic, but also there is also alternate magic, and I feel like that's some Harry Potter shit I can tap into.
Same, and it made me want to like practice, so I don't think it came across with the message that Christians would like it to.
Yeah.
And this movie did a really good job of giving the Bible bookstore answer of that. Oh, they were just doing tricks. They were just, like, oh, when they made the water into blood, they put powder in it. And as someone who grew up receiving answers like that, it was like, all right, guys,
Come on.
a little bit of, all right, come on. But to be fair, I'm not going to knock the movie at all for that.
Yeah. Although my actual favorite song is the one about the plagues. I wrote down one extremely raw line, which was like, hold on. I send my plagues, I send the horde, thus saith the Lord. Like, I send my sword, thus saith the Lord. Like, oh, that's so raw. I love that.
I have to have an honorable mention for the miracle that is when you believe. But to be very specific, we have to talk about the credits version, which is Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. Mariah
Wait,
herself
what?
said,
God,
yes.
I didn't know that.
Mariah Carey herself said they told her they had to include it into the film because they thought it was a miracle that the two of them could even record a song together.
I mean, honestly, I didn't. Oh my god, this cast is astonishing. I mean, so the songs were written primarily by Steven Schwartz, of Wicked fame. Like this was this was before Wicked too. I mean, Moses is played by Val Kilmer. He also plays the voice of God, which is very funny.
I have a really it's a tangent, but it's really cool because I laughed when I saw that God was voiced by Val Kilmer as well. But me being me, and I had to do homework, so I looked it up. And so basically, their idea behind it is they didn't want to show God as an external presence. They wanted to show God as the voice we all hear in our heads.
Oh my god.
That's so good.
So that's why
so
God
good.
is
Holy
not
shit.
credited in the scenes. It's not Val Kilmer, voice of God. He does not get any credit for that role because it's happening in his head. Yeah.
I'm literally getting chills hearing you say that because that's such a good idea. Oh my
That's
goodness.
so good.
This, like,
This movie
It's so
slaps.
smart.
I mean, they had like it's brilliant. I can't believe we were born in the era before culture died. It's just I mean, the score
I'm
was
still a
composed
little
by
upset
Hans
that
Zimmer.
you're
Holy shit.
saying that Shrek killed culture.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to stand by that. I watched Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life this morning, so
As you do every morning.
as I do every morning, but it just reminded me that we live in a dead culture.
Every time you brush your teeth, you gotta click it on.
It's a struggle.
I am curious if there's anything for this movie that just didn't quite gel for you guys in any way. Because for me, I definitely thought that it did a really good job of telling this story. I just never liked the ending.
The ending's a little weird because they're like, oh hey, he gets the 10 commandments and it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the issue with the story itself, because where this is pulling from through Judeo-Christian belief, that story doesn't end. There's no ending of the quote-unquote tale of the Jewish people, or if you're looking at it from the Christian perspective, the Christian people. And I I think they had a perfect ending with like him looking out at like the people that were now like free. And then I swear there's like one guy in there who's like, all right, but hear me out.
We need to set up a sequel.
Yeah, it felt like sequel setup.
The end credit scene, and like like Jesus comes to him with like an eye patch and he's like, I'm assembling a team.
I mean, we're joking, but I would love to see like the gritty reboot with like Aaron like building like a golden calf, and like Moses having to like Moses being like exiled from the Holy Land because he like fucked up that one time, or like the massacre of the Amalekites. Like I would love to see a DreamWorks horror like go into the deep shit of the Exodus story.
Well, this movie pulls no punches. Like, they don't make movies today where they throw babies into crocodile pits.
I mean,
Like,
yeah, he had that
they
whole...
show some violent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they had that whole hieroglyphic nightmare sequence, which I thought was brilliant, by the way. The way that they portrayed that. But, yeah, they do have the hieroglyphic babies just being like... That's another thing I still have dreams about, is the babies being thrown to the crocodiles.
Hey, Aaron, why are all of your dreams biblical?
Listen.
Lot to unpack there.
We'll get into that later, yeah.
Past episode, maybe even a series.
Aaron just getting out the dirty laundry.
Yeah, I saw all these, like, weaves of corn and, like, the stars in the sky. I don't know what it means, but my brothers are getting really mad at me lately.
I saw a king, like, turn into an animal and then get, like, really long claws and then pick out wheat and eat it. 8 people are going to get that reference in this entire
and one of them
world.
is right here. So I will say that I loved... I mean, you asked, like, what I would change to do better, and I keep thinking of things I love. So, like, I love how this film does foreshadowing, and it's not... Again, I'm someone who tends to, like, enjoy subtlety and enjoy, like, hat tipping that, like, becomes apparent on rewatch, and this film does not have that. That's not what it's about. But it's for children, and I think for children, it does. So there's the scene where they're in with the crocodile, eating the babies, and Ramses' son is talking, like, to Ramses, trying to, like, he's afraid of Moses, he's afraid of all of this. And if you look, like, when the scene pans out, the baby's being thrown in, he's, like, in the direct center of that.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that.
I didn't either.
Yeah. And so, like, when the scene, like, pans out and back in, you see him directly in the center of Ramses and Moses gives this, like, really sad look. Oh shit, I know what's about to happen. And, like, the film uses the imagery of, like, the, paintings of the, crocodilians munching. And I just think with that following scene of, the firstborn dying, that's so powerful.
They use that painting for so many different, like, ideas throughout the movie. Like, it is both what Moses escaped and what Ramses isn't.
Yeah.
And, like, the fact... I didn't even notice that at all. I do love, Michael, that you're like, man, here's this heavy-handed thing, and both me and Aaron are like, what? Pretty colors.
Look, guys, I was the one that, when we watched God's Not Dead, I did a research on the actors. Like, I'm always gonna be this way.
Nerd.
Giving yourself homework. But I mean that final sequence with the Angel of Death is like such a good sequence, because just to the way that not only that they portray the angel, they don't like show it as like an avenging like angel with like a flaming sword, but it's just like a white ghostly things just sort of like snaking through the city in Egypt. And I mean, I think that was really powerful, especially like the way it would like go, and like the way that they showed it like taking the children's lives, like where like there's the one kid who's like holding like a jar of something, and then you don't see him die, but you see him like go in the house, and then the spirit follows him, and then there's just like a shattering of the jar. I thought that was great. And then my favorite part about it at the end was where Pharaoh is like, there's that really like brutal shot of the Pharaoh of Ramses like putting his son on this slab and like covering his face up, and Moses is sort of like standing there, and he's like like heartbroken because he knows like he is like sort of responsible for killing his brother's son, like basically his nephew. And he's just really torn up about it. And then when Ramses is like, okay, fine, you can finally go, like he goes back to Miriam and Zipporah, and he's like, it's like his moment of triumph, and yet he is like so torn up about it. He's like he's weeping because he like his moment of triumph is also like the moment where he like ruined his brother forever. Like it's so good. I can't I'm just maybe movies are good. It's just that I've watched too many bad ones to realize that it's actually a good medium.
Don't get comfortable, Aaron. We're doing, this is our like peace and like our time to like heal. We're going right into bad next time.
Oh, okay.
We're going into the Bible Man series.
Are we?
But I do think your point is very.
Oh boy.
Get ready for me, where I go through.
Yeah, I guess it's your
Bible
turn.
Man
Yeah.
movies.
Oh, I hate that.
But I think you're making a really good point there, Aaron, with the idea of like moments of triumph being put with like moments of like grief. Even at the very end, where you have like a scene that stuck with me forever is Ramsey crying out Moses on the rock across the Red Sea, and in that moment, like Moses is finally free. Like that is the point where he finally got his people to freedom. A moment of like complete like joy put right next to the suffering of like his brother.
Yeah, it's this movie packs so much imagery and like symbolism and character depth into 90 minutes. It's astonishing. The one thing I did want to bring up about that sequence, besides the fact that when they part the Red Sea, it's super duper cool. Another thing that like another image from that I just like have not been able to get out of my mind is where like there's like a lightning strike and you can see like the shadow of like a fish in the wall of the Red Sea. I thought that was really cool. And then like I was looking just now, and I was like, oh, that's not a whale. That's a megalodon. Because if you could tell the way that its tail moves, like, oh no, that's an enormous.
Yeah.
That's a big shark, y'all. I thought that was funny.
Well, that also, I think Michael pointed this out before, where this is like what shaped forever how we were taught to look at the parting of the Red Sea. Like, it was that exact like giant wall of water, and any other idea was just see, that's a fancy Christian talk.
I find really interesting because the Red Sea is like, it's not like shallow, but it's also not the Mediterranean.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not a big deal.
like you're not going to have those walls that are so high that they're skyscrapers, but the movie does the imagery so beautifully that I frankly don't care in this medium.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
Like who cares?
yeah.
I think my only issue with the movie is just baggage that was put onto it later through my life, of like the power given to this movie that like, yeah, it's great, but this isn't a documentary.
Yeah.
And that is, it was portrayed that way for many years of my life. So separating that from like my actual feelings for the movie is really difficult, because those was the fundamental years of my life and made me to the good Christian lad I am today.
So I have a tangential point, because I always have tangential points. I just love how the high priests are so obviously queer coded. And I don't know if my brain is broken because of Disney that everyone who's a villain is queer because villainous traits are coded with queer traits, or if this was intentional. But I made a note, they gave me like Pain Panic from Hercules
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's literally like a thin guy and a fat guy.
Yeah. Or Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Classic.
wasn't gonna say anything, but even as a kid playing with the big boys now, I was like, this is a little weird. Why are we playing with the boys?
It's got some implications.
Yeah, we're just playing with the boys. We just me and the boys playing around.
I mean, it's incredible. And like, I watched it as an adult. This is the first time I've probably watched this film in damn near 20 years. And I instantly was like, oh, they're gay. Like, that's a couple. I can spot a couple. There you go.
I love that take because it will now forever change how I view those two.
I also have to note, like, Michelle Pfeiffer clearly had the time of her life playing Zipporah. Like,
Oh yeah.
she she sang all of the songs. She didn't have like a person singing for her. She was like, "Nah, I got it."
It's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was Zipporah was a very good character. I'm glad that Michelle Pfeiffer crushed it in this role.
it's kind of interesting, this movie, that they put like so many big name actors in it, and like that was kind of before uh the idea of like attaching like big names to a movie was like what you did in animation. Aladdin started that, which came out, of course, before this. But like, it's not how we look at it today, where like every trailer for an animated movie would like this movie would be like Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer, even if they have 8 lines in it. Like, you sell the movie around like these actors, so it's crazy that they were able to get like minor roles with like huge actors in them, just killing it in every scene.
Okay, so do you guys want to rank the story of Exodus among your favorite Bible stories? Where does it fall for you? Not like not I don't need a numbered list, but like about how do you feel about the Exodus story?
I think I'm gonna put it right below the when Jesus comes back and all the disciples are like, "You're not Jesus," and right above Samson.
Oh, you think it's better than Samson's classic, but it isn't Parting the Red Sea classic. That's fair.
There are fewer bops in Samson.
That's true.
I mean, we did get "Hey There, Delilah" out of Samson.
You're right. That is actually the most historically accurate telling
Sorry.
of that tale.
Okay, I can't. All right, please explain this to me.
Here's the thing. It's just not true. It's just a case of me lying because it's funny. That's all it is.
And me and Mike were siblings, so I went, I will continue this lie.
Wait, okay, so you, Michael...
Go ahead, unpack it.
Aaron's losing it, guys.
So my understanding is that Michael somehow convinced you, Josh, that "Hey There, Delilah" by, I think was that the Plain White
Plain
Tees?
White Tees.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
is a modern retelling of the Samson myth.
I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately, every time I have ever seen Michael lie, my brain goes, I'm going to join him on this adventure, and let's see how many people we can confuse along the way.
We are like our own.
Oh, Delilah was the woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We are our own theater troupe. We just yes and each other.
God damn it.
I would.
Well-
I mean, it's kind of accurate. Like, it's not the story of Samson and Delilah.
Okay. Michael, where does this rank for you as far as favorite Bible stories?
So I don't think it's fair to compare Old Testament and New, just because they're so different. So I'm just gonna compare this to other Old Testament stories. I would say it's like right below Esther, which is my favorite. So it's got to be my like second favorite, maybe third, but I can't think of something that I like more, like off the top of my head.
I hate that our upbringing made me immediately think, well, this has got to be up there with Esther for Michael.
Is there some sort of media that recalls the Esther story? We gotta get into that sometime.
We've got to
I
find
do
it.
think a good podcast episode would be us saying which story we want animated.
Oh my God,
Next.
pitching and casting our favorite Bible stories.
Yes.
Okay, if we can get to 10 episodes, that'll be our treat
Yes.
to ourselves.
Our treat for us and the 2 listeners that have stayed with us.
Yeah. Okay. as far as favorite Old Testament stories, I mean, like my, I mean, there's the Furnace. That's a pretty good one. There's Daniel in the Lion's Den. I was super into that. I mean, I like the part of Maccabees where they talk about all the cool like elephant and phalanx warfare. I think that's tight. I don't know. I think it is hard. It is hard to top Exodus for me though, just because of the amount of exposure. You know, maybe Joseph would be higher up there, but then I did that musical twice in the same year, and I never want to talk about Joseph again. Yeah, but no, it's just it's iconic, classic. Let's see. So, do you guys want to talk about what we are going to do next? What media we're going to consume next time? I think you know, Prince of Egypt, I feel like was more of a Michael pitch. And then I mean, God's Not Dead was I'll take the blame for that. That's my fault, and I'm forever sorry for exposing you two to those. So Josh, do you have something you want to pitch?
Yeah, I have a weird idea.
Oh,
I'm so afraid.
God.
What if we listen to a Christian album?
That could be less painful, and you know, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
What album is it?
It's been so long and they all sound the same to me that like I'm trying to remember my Christian roots to name one Christian band other than the Newsboys. Oh, the Casting Crowns.
Casting Crowns. Yes.
All right,
That's what I was looking
Casting
for.
Crowns.
Oh,
Or Toby Mac. Which one do you want?
Oh, those are both iconic. Casting Crowns and Toby Mac. Man, I don't know.
Because you got Toby Mac with Jesus Freak.
look, whichever one we're picking is going to have a 2-drink minimum for me, so...
Yeah, no, this is not a sober endeavor.
I think I would prefer to listen to the Casting Crowns over Toby Mac.
Yeah, Toby Mac is dangerously close to country.
So let's do Casting Crowns.
Okay, alright. Do you have a specific album in mind, or should we just, like, look at their top one and then decide that?
Let me look up just their albums, let's just see. Let's see. Oh,
I feel like I remember an entire album that my mom was obsessed with during, like, a phase where she was really into church.
don't worry, listeners, we got her out of it.
8 studio
Okay,
albums, my god.
I think they have 2 albums that are both called Casting Crowns.
According to Wikipedia, they have an independent album called Casting Crowns, as well as their studio album, which is called Casting
How
Crowns,
did
which
they
is
not
a choice.
name it Casting Crowns one more gan? What if we... Okay, let's do their first studio album.
Okay, so Casting Crowns?
Casting Crowns.
Alright, we'll do Casting Crowns by Casting Crowns. Great.
It's
I
only
have to say-
it's 43 minutes of music.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's... We can do it. We
We
can
can
do
do
boys.
it. If we sat through the 2+ hour endeavors that are the God's Not Dead movies, we can do this.
Yeah, this is gonna be a breeze compared to those nightmares.
The only time I listen to music is when I work out. This is gonna keep me from ever working out again.
Yeah, I mean, that's... That'll be helpful.
Oh, I'm excited, sad.
Alright, gentlemen, where can people find you on the internet?
I am at Green History.
I am at Michael's Diamond, spelled MYKALS.
And I'm at Aaron SXL. We will get back to you next week with Casting Crowns' first studio album. But until then, don't forget that it's okay to cry, because even Jesus wept.